I am Marcia Mills, and this poem is entitled Foreplay on Words. It's really okay if all I do is talk about you. You see, talk is cheap, and it has a short shelf life in the brain, often tossed about without much thought or restraint. Talk is fleeting and floats away on the first rogue wind that comes along in search of an idle mind or ear to land upon. Talk drifts carelessly off loose lips with Freudian slips, sinking ships like those with no sails. Talk drifts aimlessly, flying like bullets, often missing their target and injuring the innocent, lacking depth and landing wherever gravity allows, lest we forget. Like the dandelion's roar lasts but only a moment. Talk is only the wisp of a whisper, becoming a deaf and dumb puppet. Oh, be wise. Talk is often twisted and manipulated to one's own demise, so it's really okay if all I do is talk about you. Oh, but if I write about you, when this poet takes the time to sit and put pen to paper, my words are eternally etched in stone. Commandment, shouted from the mountaintop with no abandonment. A mind bent on self-expression. You see, I'm adamant. With pen dripping liquid gold, it's priceless. You can't buy me. It's timeless. You can't deny me. Like a delta, but you can't fly by me. With lyrics flowing like a river on paper, but when spoken, the words disappear like vapor. Oh, but when I write, I reclaim all power and control. My word, once written, is passed down like ancient scrolls, painstakingly laid out letter by letter and line by line, an architectural wonder with intricate design. My word drops bombs like amethyst rocks and rolls like thunder. It's no wonder that it's shocking like lightning. Its brightness is frightening, illuminating dark skies and opening minds' eyes. And when him won't do right, I write. You see, my words come in like wrecking balls, breaking hearts and smashing walls, crumbling weak and damaged egos. I'll write about your mama, your papa, your enemies and amigos. So don't make me have to write about you. For when I do, you'll come to see that your unborn grandchildren will shun the written word for fear that it was written about them and penned by me. So it's really okay if all I do is talk about you. You see, when lip touches tongue, there's no need to run. I'd rather use my pen than to pull out a gun, because I can only blow your brains out once. But with my rhyme, I can blow your mind 1,000,000 times. For you see, I speak with my mouth, I write from my soul. I speak with a silver tongue, but my writing flows pure gold. I speak to be heard, I write so I can thrive. I speak with passion, but I write to stay alive. With each word shaped and molded like a potter working with clay, be careful how you play on words, 'cause a poet's words don't play.
In your own words, who are you?
I am a supporter of expression and just being true. I'm just being true to oneself.
I'm KB Valentine, and I like to write about the human psyche through the view of nature. So a lot of times people think I'm just writing a nature poem, but if they actually read for the subtext, they get it. They get what I'm saying. And so, I'm better on the page, I think, than in performance. But I really, really appreciate all forms of poetry. And so I'm a lover of language and different ways to express it.
Nice. So I have the benefit of knowing you guys for at least close to 18 years.
I know.
And I met you both through an organization called Rhyme Chat. You speak about what Rhyme Chat is, what it was, how you guys came to find your way into it.
Rhyme Chat is an interactive poetry organization, so it allows for people to rhyme, to share their poetry, and then also some interaction from the audience, so we chat at the end of the poem. So I started attending Rhyme Chat sessions probably back in 1999 when it first started. And it was a gentleman by the name of Vincent Phipps and Damian Helton who got things going. And I went in thinking that I'm just going to listen to people share. I had, a shoebox full of, crumpled paper with fragments of poetry written on it, but I never thought about sharing it, giving it voice. And that platform, it was just so warm and so welcoming that I eventually stood and shared some of my poetry, and it felt so good and so liberating to be able to share, and to be able to share in an environment that was open and friendly and not judgmental or anything like that. And I have been putting voice to my poetry ever since.
Yeah, I heard about it through Vincent Phipps, and I agree. I just started going thinking, I don't know about us reading out loud or performing poetry or anything, but everybody really was warm and welcoming. It was not at all like, oh, okay, let's hear what you're going to say. It wasn't like that at all. Everybody was so inclusive and wanted to hear everybody's stories, and I just really felt like I could share my story there. And what's funny is the very first book I published came out because of Rhyme and Chat and the different people and the stories that people were telling about their backgrounds and their histories and stuff. And so I started exploring mine, and so that's how I ended up even publishing my first book.
So I want to start off with that. How has Rhyme and Chat further influenced the poets that you are in your practice?
I personally am very shy and withdrawn. However, I have this alter ego that came out of me. She's the poetic diva, and she is fierce. And she is yeah. So she says things that Marsha would never say. And it's been a really, really good experience, and it has allowed me to better learn myself because of the fact that I am able to stand and to share and to engage the audience in ways that I never thought that I would be able to do.
Yeah, it was only through experience and getting up in front of everybody at Rhyme and Chat that I was able to take on somebody else's job as a host of an open mic, and I never ever would have done that if I hadn't already felt warmth and love from people who just wanted to hear poetry, hear people's stories, fall in love with language, and I just wanted to be part of that and help continue that.
Can you talk about this open mic in which you host?
Yes, I host the open mic at Barnes & Noble the last Friday every month from January to October. So it's just the only real pressure we have is that we can't use any languages better than PG. That's not better than PG, but because there are little kids running around the store, and so we have to abide by that. But other than that, people share all sorts of stuff. It's really interesting. We even have a set of lists that we deal with, and everybody writes something different, and it's pretty amazing how, it always comes back to language. Everybody's got their own story to tell, their own history, and when you try to write it and share it with other people, it comes out, whether you're using the same, we're all using the same words, and it's just how we put it together. And I just love that about poetry, about writing, and language in general.
And you are a host as well, or a hostess, I should say, as well. Do you want to talk about your experience with Rhyme and Chat shows?
Yes. So in the past, Rhyme and Chat, we've been doing events since 1999. We started off doing a lot of open mics, like every other Tuesday or so. We would all get together in different places. We were like poetic nomads. We had we had meetings in coffee shops. We had meetings under the bridge. We were just wherever we could find a spot, we would have open mics. And we had members who were, just kind of regulars who would share. But anybody who was in the room had an opportunity to share their poetry as well. In addition to that, we've done exposés, we've had showcases where we've actually had some poetry competitions. And currently our main focus is on an actual themed show So we have a live band that comes in and backs us up. So we do some poetry. Of course, we still have the interactive piece that makes Rhyme and Chat who we are. So the audience still responds to us and asks questions of the poet and things of that nature. And one of the fundamental things with Rhyme and Chat, kind of similar to what you just mentioned, is that we always ask to keep the poetry PG-13. And we make it very clear that you can write about whatever you want to write about, but we challenge you to express your passion, your angst, your anger, all of those things, but don't use just the common words.
Sure.
You know, we want to press you a little bit.
I like that.
And there's
Challenge them. It's a challenge.
Right,
Yeah, don't
right.
use
It's
a
so
four-letter
easy.
word.
Right, it's so easy
It
to
is.
throw in a 4-letter word. But can you express that in a way that'll make somebody think, be like, oh, that's what they meant.
Sure.
Yeah. So we still have that piece, but we draw at this point. We're drawing audiences between 150 to 200 people that are coming out for a poetry show.
Sure.
So at one point that was like unheard of,
Right.
to get that many people together to actually pay
Yeah.
to come for a poetry show. But we have, like I said, the live band. People are dancing and they're eating and mingling, and it's just still really, really warm, still really, really welcoming. But that's our current platform at this, and we still have the open mic. So anybody who's in the room, if they want to get up and share something, we've had several instances where people have come up and expressed a love poem to the person who came with them. Oh yes, it's been really, really
Putting the
sweet.
pressure on your partner.
Well, they've come up and you know, done short of proposing. I don't think we've actually had a proposal yet, but they've surprised the person who came with them. It's like, I didn't even know that you wrote poetry, but they would feel comfortable enough to get up and share on a Rhyme and Chat stage. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what it's all about.
Nice.
That's what it's all about.
How did you both discover poetry?
Oh, I discovered poetry through my pain.
How so?
I was going through a difficult time, and had like this chaotic swirl of emotions and thoughts, and I had the option to go down the process of losing my mind, or coming up with a way to try to harness some of that and try to make sense of it all. And I've always been one to take notes, to write notes. So I just kind of started doing what I would refer to as just like an emotional dump, just a purge, and just started writing and putting it out on paper. And then somehow in the midst of my writing and just kind of reworking it and massaging it, it became poetry. One of the beautiful things about poetry to me is the fact that it doesn't necessarily have to be structured. You know, it doesn't have to be sonnet-like. It doesn't have to be, you know, a certain number of beats. And
Sure.
it can pretty much be whatever it needs to be. It doesn't have to rhyme. It just has to express. And so that's kind of where that all came from. I don't believe when I first started going to the open mics and with Rhyme and Chat that I even considered myself a poet. I knew that I enjoyed writing. I knew that I had a love and a respect for words. And it just happened to, somehow I came across finding out that something was happening at Glenwood Recreation Center, and they had some people getting together, and I just went by. So it was actually a process before I even realized that I was a poet. But it was just my way of handling all the emotions that I was having to deal with at that point. Kind of poetry saved my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I started teaching about 30 years ago, and when I started teaching, I went around and I asked all the other teachers when I got to the poetry unit, how do you teach poetry? And all the other teachers said, we don't teach poetry. And I'm like, why didn't you teach poetry?
Right.
Because it's so subjective, you can't really grade that. So I had nothing. I mean, for every other unit, people had given me stuff. Hey, you can try this. Nothing for poetry. And I thought, well, I am not going to, let that get away. I'm always one for a challenge. And so I just wrote for some books. I found some books that said how to teach poetry to teenagers or whatever. And so I don't ever ask my students to do something I don't try first.
Sure.
So, I always thought I wanted to be a novelist, and, then found out in, grad school that apparently the professor didn't think that was going to happen. And so I stopped writing for a while. And it was through that I actually discovered that I liked poetry, just because I was putting stuff to the page. And then, like you, I found myself in a situation where basically had to write in order to work my way through the pain of loss. And it was just a miraculous thing to be able to say, okay, I don't have to just sit and dwell and stew in my head. I can write something down. And that sort of just like releases it for you.
And there's a beauty in being able to go through that process of releasing, but then when you have an opportunity to share it with other people and realize that you aren't alone in the feelings that you felt, and that you're able to express pain, grief, whatever those emotions are, in a way that another person could not even express it, but they get it.
Yes.
That's a beautiful thing.
And that's what I really like when you do performance poetry, or when you just read it out loud too, is because you hear people go, you hear that reaction. And so that's a lot nicer than just having something on a page and say, here, read my poem, kind of thing. Because even if they get it from the page and they go, yeah, I get that, it's not the same as when you hear somebody going, oh, I feel you, or, been there, or you get that. And it's just, you're just like, I didn't go through this, and I didn't write this for nothing.
That's right.
Coming off of that, what was your definitive moment where you said to yourself, I am now a poet? Or has there been one?
I believe the title was put on me by others and not necessarily me putting it on myself. One of the ways that I express my poetry is I enjoy singing.
You have a lovely voice.
You're so kind. So see, it's people like this so I write I have my poem, but a lot of times there'll be like a melody line or something that'll be ringing in my head. So it was actually another poet friend who gave me this title of poetic diva. Hopefully it's not like I'm diva.
No.
Hopefully it's not that type
Not
of
at
thing.
all.
But it came from the fact that I mixed spoken word with singing. So it wasn't, me saying, what should I call myself? I believe I shall be. It wasn't that type of thing. It was just kind of over time, and people would start, I hear that you do poetry. Would you come to my event and share something? And it was, people considered me a poet.
Right.
But I don't believe that I ever got to the point to where, where I was the very first person to say, yes, I believe today I am a poet. I don't believe that ever happened.
Right. No, I agree. I'm with you on that, because the same thing happened to me at the Rhyme and Chat sessions. Is I was given the name Celtic Poet because that's where I started, studying my heritage and that. And so when I started writing all my Irish poems, that name was given to me, and I think it was because of that I felt like a poet. Even my first book came out, and I'm not sure I consider myself a poet, but I think now, like you said, it's not me considering myself that, but other people considering me that. And so it's really nice when somebody calls you up and says, hey, would you like to be on a panel about poetry? Me? What? Yes, I would. I'm always taken aback at first, because I just think, why would you ask me? And then I think, oh, because I write poetry.
It's like, why would you not ask me?
I know, that's what I need to think.
Exactly.
I was having a conversation with somebody fairly recently, and we kind of talked about that. And they said that, being a poet is kind of the easiest thing for somebody to call themselves without actually having like a practice. Like, if you're a doctor, you're like, oh, I'm a doctor. What do you study? It's like, oh, I do such and such. And there's proof inherent in what you're doing.
Right.
But if someone says, I'm a poet, you're like, okay, well, where's? And you're like,
No, actually, I don't agree with that, because I think it's easier for writers in general. I think the poets have it the easiest with being able to produce something right away. But somebody who says they're a writer, that would be more difficult, I think, because you might be in the middle of your novel, but who's going to pull out just the first third of a novel and say this is you wouldn't consider yourself finished, and a writer maybe until you had finished. But
Sure.
poetry, you can. I can pull some stuff out of my bags and show you I'm a poet. I have a practice.
I have my receipts.
I have a
There you go.
practice.
There you go. And that is true. That is true, because you can be put on the spot as a poet. And I believe it's going to be a really, really rare occasion, if ever, that you come up to someone who is a poet and you say, well, share something with me. And they have nothing that they can share. They either have something in their head, something, in their phone that they've saved somewhere. And that wouldn't necessarily be true with someone who's a writer, who's a novelist.
I want to go in a slightly different direction. How would you say that the poetry scene here has evolved since when you first set foot within it?
Wow. I want to say there's so much more going on, but sometimes I wonder if there weren't things going on and I was just unaware. And so I don't know. I really do think there's a lot more now than there used to be, but I also think there was probably more than I was aware of at the time when I first started, in the 90s, doing poetry, becoming a poet. But there is so much now. I mean, I can't get to all the stuff that I want to do because there is so much going on. Before I was able to, to schedule out something and hit one thing one month and one thing in another month, but now it's just ridiculous how many things I want to go to and I don't get to.
Sure.
Practically every night there is something going on somewhere in our city. And it's been wonderful to watch the evolution of that. And I believe at this point that there is something for everyone.
Every time.
And there is. No matter what your taste is, no matter where you are in your journey, there's something poetic offered in this city for everyone.
I agree.
What do you think the poetry scene could use more of?
I would like to say that we really need more people who have facilities, who are in charge of venues, actual physical locations, to be willing to let people come in and share their work. I mean, it's really hard. I love that Barnes & Noble lets us do that, but one of the reasons we don't meet in November and December is because the mall traffic is so crazy, and there's no way, they don't have room for us to be there. Wouldn't it be great if we could meet somewhere every month and not just, 10 of the 12 months? But, I really think if the leadership in the community was aware of how many people were interested and how many people this actually helps, we do have pockets of people who are aware, but a lot of times those people themselves are not in a position to be able to offer, a location or something like that.
Sure.
In addition to that, I believe our city needs more opportunities for young writers. We do have workshops like Manifest Voices and things like that, but as far as just an ongoing opportunity for those, like from the point to where they first start writing, an opportunity for them to stand and share in front of their peers and others, not only is it going to strengthen their ability to write and their love of words and hopefully their love of reading, but also the social skills that you gain just from sharing and interacting with others, standing before a group of people and bearing your soul. Oh my goodness. So it would just be wonderful to see an opportunity, a platform that fosters kids all across the city, not just in your English class,
sure,
but all across the city, just a gathering place for young people.
And not just one, but several.
Yes.
One of the reasons I started going to Rhyme and Chat was because I started teaching and was interested in, getting a place for my students to hear more poetry. And so, I work an hour north of here, and I drug, a van load of kids to downtown Chattanooga. And it was wonderful that they got to experience that, but it's harder for them to do that because they don't have a vehicle, or if they do, they're not allowed to, travel during the week or something like that. But if there was something at the north end of the county or the south end of the county for those kids, if there were lots of different places that were fostering young writers, I think it would really be wonderful. We have a lot of kids who have a lot of things to share and no place to share it.
I think a lot of our social divide could be kind of broken down as well. You know, when kids from different backgrounds all come together
Right.
to hear other kids from different backgrounds share, you know, it kind of gives you some commonality that before that happened you didn't have.
Right.
So it kind of opens your mind a bit, and I believe a lot of our social issues from as people are growing and going into their into their teen years and all of that, some of that could be kind of broken down if they actually had an opportunity to mingle with people who were unlike them.
Just like you see when you watch Louder Than a Bomb, you know, when you see all those different types of kids coming together and they're just rooting for each other, and it doesn't matter what their background is.
Sure.
So wouldn't that be wonderful if we had places all over the counties, that the different portions of the county doing their own thing, but then have one,
Where
a
they
big
all
one
come
where they all
together.
come together.
That would
That
be
would be really fun.
Beautiful. That would be beautiful.
What do you find most challenging about being a poet here?
About being a poet or just being a poet in Chattanooga?
Yeah.
Yes, to both of those. I think it goes back a little bit. One, partially to, you know, are the people who are in charge of things around the community aware that there are people who are willing to share their time and their energy with other people in the poetic world. I think it's difficult. Chattanooga is becoming really well known for all the different, the vibrancy of the city now. It's been cleaned up. People aren't afraid. You know, all sorts of wonderful things. I mean, I go places now and I hear people when they ask where I'm from and I say Chattanooga, they go, oh, well, that's, you know, they've been here recently or they've seen this or that or the other, and I just think that's, you know, that's great. And a lot of it is geared toward outdoor recreational kind of things, you know, and I would like for them to know that there are intellectual things for people here too. And I just think that's a little difficult. People from around the country in particular have difficulty with, I think, people from the South. They think it's regional, so they give us sort of a label of that, and so it makes it harder around the country. But that's a different issue. I think.
The only struggle that I have as a poet in Chattanooga is getting to everything that Chattanooga has to offer.
That's true.
Because Chattanooga has so much to offer, and things that weren't available 15, 20 years ago, or we weren't aware that they were available 15, 20 years ago. And just being able, because I just want to be everywhere and soak it all in, and it's really hard to do that and work a job and take care of your family too.
Right.
but there's just so much to choose from.
What is something that you are most proud of that poetry has brought to your life?
Save a good one for last.
I do what I can.
You know, the people. I really think the different people that I've become close to, that I've come in contact with, there are people I never would have met. There are things I never would have written if I hadn't met different people. So it kind of is one of those, you know, cyclical things. Because I've written and been asked to go different places and share my work, then I end up meeting people, which makes me want to write about things that I see where they are because of them. And so I really think people.
That's very true. And in addition to that, it's been the whole journey of self-expression. I believe I know myself better than I would had I not been exposed to poetry. I believe that I can deal with my emotions better since I have the venue, the vehicle of writing it out. And it also puts me in a position to share that as an option to other people who I'm exposed to, who I'm around. So even my daughter, she's 14, she writes. And it's her way of just expressing all of the stuff that's going on in her, you know, teenage mind, the things that she's dealing with. and just having another venue to share and to express herself. And that, I believe that there's a great deal of power in that.
I'm KB Ballantyne, and I'll be reading Almost Everything, Almost Nothing. I consider this a breakthrough poem for me because it's about my work, which is teaching with high school students, and it's a very personal poem for me. Almost everything, almost nothing. 30 minutes through the valley, halfway up the mountain, past ridges and hollows, places cops won't go, past plywood and plastic sheeted houses, soil thin and rocky between trailers, boasting faded flags for curtains, until I get to her home. The student who made me weep with poems so beautiful. Birch branches scratching sky, obscure violets tempt rumor, something like love in the hesitant snow. Here are her school books, schoolwork, papers the state says take to her, but the family won't let me in. Father, uncles sit outside, screens of smoke around their heads, beer cans, some rocking in wind, others crushed, clutter the peeling porch. Dogs powdered with dirt pant beside concrete blocks. Mama walked away from this mess, left her baby, girl, and 3 others, and my girl, comes to the door standing, wide in this October sunshine, won't look at me as we find a place away from the men. Watching. Dandruff dusts her scalp, blonde strands struggling in the breeze as she consumes the bits and pieces. But X times Y means nothing when baby sister cries, and she steps past her brothers playing swords in the yard with, what's that? Rusted car fenders. Umber, scarlet in the trees, grip winter's promise, air cooling as evening comes. She emerges from the dim interior, baby and bottle in arms, while I flip pages under the mountains, widening shadow.